Jake Morrison sat in the captain's chair of the Horizon, staring at the strange message on his screen. After 30 years of space travel, he had never seen anything like it. The words were in perfect English, but they came from somewhere beyond, the solar system, somewhere humans had never been. "Captain, you need to see this," said Lisa Rodriguez from her station. She was the ship's expert on alien life, though until today that job had been mostly theoretical. Her hands shook slightly as she turned her screen toward him. The message was simple but impossible. It read, "Greetings to the small bipeds from the third planet. We are the Valdris Empire. We wish to meet with your leaders. You seem harmless enough for contact." Jake felt his stomach drop. Harmless enough. The words stuck in his mind like a thorn. Humanity had just figured out how to travel faster than light 5 years ago. They had 3 ships capable of reaching other star systems. The Horizon was the newest and best of them, but compared to what was out there, it might as well be a paper airplane. "How did they get our language?" Jake asked. Lisa pulled up another. "Serious. They've been watching us, Captain. For at least 50 years, maybe longer, they know everything about us. Our cities, our weapons, our people. They've been studying us like we study insects." The comparison made Jake uncomfortable. He had spent his whole career believing that when humanity finally met aliens, it would be between equals. 2 civilizations meeting in space, sharing knowledge, and friendship. This felt different. This felt like a giant looking down at an ant. Another crew member, Danny Rodriguez, walked over to them. He was Lisa's younger brother and the ship's security chief. Where Lisa was thoughtful and careful, Danny was quick to act and ready to fight. "So what do they want?" he asked. "They want to evaluate us," Lisa said, reading more of the message. "To see if we're worthy of joining their empire. As a protected species." "Protected," Danny repeated, "like pets." Jake stood up and walked to the big window that showed the stars. Somewhere out there, beings more advanced than humans were deciding their fate. The message had come with coordinates to a place called Nexus Prime, a space station bigger than any city on Earth according to the data they sent. "Contact Earth," Jake ordered. "Send everything to Admiral Sullivan. Let him decide what we do next." It took 3 hours to get a response from Earth. When it came, Jake wasn't surprised by the orders. Earth wanted him to go to this meeting. They wanted to know what humanity was dealing with. Jake understood the logic, but he didn't like it. The journey to Nexus Prime took 2 weeks. During that time, Lisa studied everything the Valdris had sent about themselves. They were not one species, but 7, all working together under something called the Supreme Council. The strongest were the Kellery, tall beings made of what looked like living crystal. They could shoot energy from their hands and lived for thousands of years. Their warriors were called Throkani. They looked like giant insects with armor harder than steel. One of them could lift a car without effort. Their scientists could change the weather on entire planets. Their leaders could control minds across space. "How many worlds do they control?" Jake asked one day while Lisa showed him pictures of different alien species. "Over 3,000, she replied. "They've been expanding for 3,000 years. Every species they meet either joins willingly or gets conquered. No one has ever said no to them and survived." Jake looked at the pictures, dozens of different alien races, all bowing to Valdris masters. Some looked like humans but with different skin colors. Others were completely strange, with too many arms or eyes in weird places. All of them had the same expression in the pictures: defeat. "Have any of them ever fought back?" he asked. Lisa shook her head. "According to their records, most species surrender immediately. The few that tried to fight were defeated in days, sometimes hours. The Valdris have weapons that can destroy entire fleets from across a solar system. They have shields that make them nearly impossible to hurt. And their strongest fighters have never lost a battle." Danny joined the conversation. "So what makes them think we're different?" "Nothing," Lisa said. "They think we're exactly the same as everyone else. Weak, primitive, and smart enough to know when we're beaten." Jake thought about that. The Valdris had been watching Earth for 50 years. They had seen human wars, human weapons, human cities. They knew about human strength and speed and intelligence. And after all that study, they had decided that humans were harmless. Maybe they were right. A single Valdris warrior could probably defeat 10 human soldiers. Their worst weapons could level human cities. Their oldest children probably knew more about science than Earth's greatest experts. But something bothered Jake about the whole situation. If the Valdris were so powerful, why did they need an empire at all? Why collect weaker species instead of just ignoring them? And why did they seem so interested in making sure everyone knew how strong they were? The horizon reached Nexus Prime on a Tuesday morning, Earth time. The space station was exactly as big as the Valdris had claimed. It looked like a small moon made of metal and glass, with ships coming and going from hundreds of docking ports. Jake had never seen so much activity in one place. "Incoming transmission," called out Helen Carter, the ship's communication officer. She was also their ambassador, chosen for this mission because she was good at talking to difficult people. On Earth, that meant angry politicians. Here it meant aliens who thought humans were barely worth their time. The message came from something called the Docking Authority. It gave them specific instructions about where to land and how to behave once they were on the station. The rules were simple. Follow your escort, don't touch anything, and remember that you are guests who can be removed at any time. Cheerful bunch, Danny muttered. As they docked with the station, Jake looked out at the other ships around them. Most were sleek and beautiful, made of materials that seemed to glow with their own light. The Horizon, humanity's most advanced ship, looked like a crude metal box next to them. A group of aliens met them at the airlock. The leader was tall and thin, with skin that looked like polished silver. It spoke perfect English with a voice that sounded like music and ice mixed together. "Welcome to Nexus Prime, humans," it said. "I am Guide Veltar. I will escort you to the evaluation chamber. Please follow me and do not stray from the designated path." Jake, Lisa, Danny, and Helen followed the alien through corridors that were wider than any hallway on Earth. Other aliens passed them, some in groups, others alone. All of them stopped to stare at the humans. Jake felt like an animal in a zoo. The evaluation chamber was a vast room with seats arranged in circles, rising up like an ancient amphitheater. At the center was a small platform where the humans were told to stand. Above them, hundreds of aliens looked down with expressions ranging from curiosity to boredom. A new voice spoke, coming from everywhere at once. "I am High Counselor Zethkar of the Valdris Supreme Council. You stand before us to be judged. We will determine your place in our empire, or whether you have any place at all." Jake looked up at the assembled aliens and realized that humanity's fate was about to be decided by beings who had already made up their minds. The Valdris thought they knew everything about humans. They were about to find out how wrong they were. The evaluation began with questions that felt more like insults. High Counselor Zethkar spoke from somewhere above them, his voice echoing through the chamber like thunder. Jake could not see him clearly, only a tall shadow made of what looked like blue crystal. "Show us your strongest warrior," the voice commanded. Danny stepped forward. He was in good shape for a human, but standing in this room full of giants, he looked small. Around them, Jake could hear quiet laughter from the alien audience. Some of them pointed at Danny and spoke in languages that sounded like music or grinding metal. A new alien entered the chamber. This one was different from their silver-skinned guide. It stood 12 feet tall and looked like a massive insect walking on two legs. Its body was covered in black armor that seemed to grow from its skin. When it moved, Jake could hear the sound of metal scraping against stone. "This is Warrior Kethmos of the Throkani," Zethkar announced. "He is considered weak by our standards. Show us how your champion compares." Danny looked at the creature and then at Jake. There was no fear in his eyes, only calculation. That was Danny's way. He always looked for advantages, even in impossible situations. "I would be honored to demonstrate human combat ability," Danny said. His voice carried clearly through the chamber. The insect warrior made a sound that might have been laughter. It reached out with one arm and picked up a metal bar that was lying nearby. The bar was as thick as Jake's leg, but the alien bent it into a circle with no effort at all. Danny nodded politely. "Impressive strength," he said. Then he walked over to a small control panel on the wall. With quick movements, he took it apart and rebuilt it into something new. In 30 seconds, he had created a simple but effective tool. "What is that supposed to prove?" asked Zethkar. "Different species have different strengths," Danny replied. "You asked to see our abilities. This is one of them." The alien audience seemed unimpressed. Jake could see that they were already bored. To them, this was just another primitive species trying to look important before accepting their place as servants. Next came Lisa's turn. A group of Valdris scientists entered the chamber. They looked like walking gemstones, their bodies made of the same crystal material as Zethkar but in different colors. One was deep red, another was green like emeralds, and the third was clear as glass. "We will examine your biology," the red one announced, "to determine your usefulness in various labor categories." Lisa submitted to their scans without complaint. Strange lights played over her body while machines that looked like floating mirrors recorded everything. The scientists spoke to each other in their musical language, occasionally making sounds that were clearly dismissive. "Weak bone structure," the green one said in English. "Limited muscle development. Short lifespan. Slow healing. This species will require careful management to be productive." "What about intelligence?" asked the clear one. They gave Lisa a series of tests: mathematics, pattern recognition, problem solving. She completed them quickly and accurately, but the aliens didn't seem impressed. Adequate for basic tasks was their final judgment. Unsuitable for complex work. Jake watched this happen and felt anger building in his chest. These beings were judging his people like they were farm animals being sorted for different jobs. But he kept his expression neutral. Getting angry now would only make things worse. Helen Carter was next. As their ambassador, she was supposed to represent humanity's diplomatic abilities. A new group of aliens entered for this test. These were different again. Tall and thin with skin that changed colors like oil on water. "We are the Nexari," their leader said. "We handle negotiations for the Empire. Tell us why your species deserves consideration for protected status rather than immediate conquest." This was Helen's moment. She had spent her whole career negotiating with difficult people, finding common ground where others saw only conflict. But Jake could see the challenge she faced. How do you negotiate with someone who has already decided you're worthless? "Humans have unique qualities that could benefit the Empire," Helen began. "We adapt quickly to new situations. We solve problems in creative ways. We work well together even under pressure. All species make these claims," the Nexari leader replied. "Yet when tested, they all prove to be variations of the same basic patterns. You will be no different." "Perhaps we could demonstrate," Helen suggested. "Give us a problem that other species have failed to solve." The Nexari looked at each other, their skin shifting through different color patterns. Finally, the leader spoke. "Very well. There is a trade dispute between two of our member species. The Corvani mine a mineral that the Telthari need for their technology. The Corvani want to charge more, but the Telthari say the price is already too high. This has been going on for 50 years. Solve it." Helen thought for a moment. What if the Telthari helped improve the Corvani mining equipment? Better tools would mean more minerals with less work. The Corvani could sell more at a lower price, per unit, but make more profit overall. The Telthari get cheaper materials and the Corvani get more income. The Nexari were quiet for a long moment. Then the leader said, "This solution has been proposed before. It failed because neither species trusts the other enough to share technology." "Then make it a three-way partnership," Helen replied. "The Empire provides the initial investment and takes a small percentage of the profits. Both species get what they want, and the Empire benefits from increased trade." Again, silence. Jake could see that Helen had surprised them, but he wasn't sure if that was good or bad. Finally, High Counselor Zethkar spoke again. "Interesting, but irrelevant. Clever words cannot change physical reality. Your species lacks the strength to be warriors, the knowledge to be scientists, and the power to be leaders. You will serve in whatever capacity we determine." "What if we refuse?" Jake asked. The question sent a ripple of shock through the chamber. Many of the aliens made sounds of surprise or amusement. Some looked like they had never heard such a question before. Refuse? Zethkar repeated. You cannot refuse. We have evaluated your military capabilities. Your entire species could not defeat a single one of our battle fleets. Your weapons are primitive, your defenses are worthless, and your numbers are insignificant. Other species have tried to resist, added one of the other council members. The Korvani had ships that could destroy moons. The Zalathi had warriors who could fight for days without rest. The Porthani had minds that could predict our strategies. All of them fell within days of conflict beginning. Jake looked around the chamber at all the alien faces staring down at them. He thought about Earth, billions of people going about their lives, not knowing that their future was being decided in this room by beings who saw them as nothing more than useful animals. I understand, Jake said finally. You've made your decision. Indeed, Zethkar replied. You have 6 of your months to prepare your world for integration. We will return then to begin the process. Consider yourselves fortunate. Most species receive far less time to adjust. The evaluation was over. Guide Veltar appeared to escort them back to their ship. As they walked through the corridors, Jake noticed something he had missed before. Every alien they passed, except for the Valdris, themselves had the same look in their eyes. It wasn't just defeat. It was the complete absence of hope. Back on the horizon, the crew gathered in the main meeting room. No one spoke for several minutes. Finally, Helen broke the silence. They think we're helpless, she said. We might be, Lisa replied quietly. Danny shook his head. No, we're not helpless. We're just not what they expected. And maybe that's our advantage. Jake looked at his crew, these people he had served with for years. They were scared, but they weren't broken. Not yet. Set course for Earth, he ordered. It's time to go home and figure out what humans do when the impossible happens. The Horizon reached Earth 3 weeks after the evaluation at Nexus Prime. Jake had never been so happy to see the blue and green planet that was home to all humanity. But as they approached, he could see that things had already started to change. Military. Ships were moving between Earth and the Moon in greater numbers than he had ever seen. Space stations that had been under construction for years were suddenly buzzing with activity. Even from orbit, Jake could see new structures being built in the major cities. Admiral Patrick Sullivan met them at the lunar base. He was a tall, serious man who had spent most of his life preparing for wars that never came. Now he finally had a war to fight, but it was against enemies that seemed impossible to defeat. Tell me everything, Sullivan said as soon as Jake and his crew entered the briefing room. They spent 4 hours going through every detail of their time at Nexus Prime. Sullivan listened without interruption, taking notes on a tablet that he never let anyone else see. When they finished, he was quiet for a long time. 6 months, he said finally. They gave us 6 months to surrender. Yes, sir, Jake replied, and they seemed very confident that we would. Sullivan stood up and walked to the window that looked out at Earth. They might be right. We've run the numbers. Even if we converted every ship, every weapon, every piece of military equipment, on Earth and in space, we couldn't match what they showed you. Lisa spoke up. Admiral, there might be another way. The Valdris made some mistakes during our evaluation. They revealed things about themselves that they might not have meant to. What kind of things? They're overconfident, Danny said. That warrior they showed me was supposed to be weak by their standards, but he moved like someone who had never been in a real fight. All strength, no strategy. Helen nodded. And their negotiators kept talking about how other species had failed to resist them. But they also mentioned that some of those species had impressive abilities. If those species lost so quickly, it wasn't because they were weak. It was because they fought the wrong kind of fight. Sullivan turned back to them. Explain. Every species they conquered tried to match them strength for strength, Jake said. Ship against ship, warrior against warrior, technology against technology. But humans don't fight that way. We've never fought that way. What do you mean? Danny stepped forward. In every war in human history, someone has been stronger than someone else. Better weapons, more soldiers, superior technology. But the stronger side doesn't always win. Sometimes the weaker side wins by changing the rules of the fight. Sullivan was quiet again, thinking. Finally, he said, "Show me what you're talking about." They spent the next week at the lunar base working with Earth's military planners. Jake and his crew shared everything they had learned about Valdris technology and tactics. In return, they learned about the preparations that had been happening on Earth. The preparations were not what Jake had expected. Yes, there were new weapons being built and new ships being launched. But there were also other things. Evacuation plans for major cities. Underground facilities that could support millions of people for years. Communication networks that could function even if all the satellites were destroyed. We're not preparing to win a war, Jake realized. We're preparing to survive one. General Marcus Stone, Sullivan's chief of staff, overheard him. That's right. The Valdris expect us to fight them the way everyone else has. Big fleets in space, armies on the ground, a quick and decisive battle. But what if we don't give them that kind of fight? What do you mean? What if we make them hunt us? What if every victory costs them more than they expected? What if we make them fight for every city, every base, every ship? What if we make conquest so expensive that they decide it's not worth the effort? Jake thought about this. It was a desperate strategy, but it might be the only one that had a chance of working. Meanwhile, the Valdris were making their own preparations. They had set up a monitoring station at the edge of the solar system, just beyond the orbit of Neptune. The station was commanded by a young Kalari officer named Krelvas. Krelvas had never commanded anything more important than a supply convoy. Watching Earth was considered a training assignment, a way for junior officers to gain experience without risking anything important. After all, what could the primitive humans do that would require serious attention? The monitoring station had a crew of 20 aliens from various species within the Valdris Empire. Most of them were young and inexperienced. Like Krelvas himself, the senior officers had more important assignments preparing for the conquests of other worlds. From his position at the edge of the solar system, Krelvas watched Earth through powerful sensors that could detect everything from radio transmissions to the movement of individual ships. What he saw confirmed everything the evaluation had predicted. The humans appeared to be panicking. Their news broadcasts showed crowds of people fleeing from cities. Their government seemed to be collapsing as different groups argued about what to do. Their military was scattered and disorganized, with ships and personnel moving in seemingly random patterns. They're falling apart before we even attack, Krelvas reported to his superiors. This will be even easier than predicted. But Krelvas was young and inexperienced. He saw what he expected to see, not what was actually happening. The fleeing crowds were moving in carefully planned patterns, relocating to positions that would be more defensible. The government arguments were theater, designed to make Earth's leaders look weak and divided. The military movements were not random at all, but part of a complex strategy that spread Earth's forces throughout the solar system. The Valdris monitoring station also failed to notice other things. Small ships that launched from Earth and disappeared into the asteroid belt. Communications that were disguised to look like commercial traffic but were actually military coordination. Construction projects that appeared to be civilian but were actually military installations. Captain Claire Evans was one of the people the Valdris were not noticing. She commanded a ship called the Phantom, which had been designed specifically for stealth and reconnaissance. The Valdris sensors could detect the Phantom, but they dismissed it as just another primitive human vessel. Evans spent weeks moving through the outer solar system, studying the Valdris monitoring station. She mapped its defenses, identified its weaknesses, and most importantly, figured out how its sensors worked. The information she gathered would be crucial for what came next. The Valdris made another mistake around this time. High Counselor Zeth Carr decided that humanity needed a demonstration of Valdris power to encourage their surrender. He ordered a small fleet to conduct exercises near Mars, close enough for Earth sensors to detect but far enough away to be safe. The fleet consisted of 3 ships, each one larger and more powerful than anything humans had ever built. They moved through space with casual confidence, their shields glowing with energy that could deflect any human weapon. But the humans were watching and learning. Dr. Amanda Foster, working with a team of scientists on the moon, analyzed every detail of the Valdris ships. She studied their energy signatures, their movement patterns, their communication methods. "They're showing off," she told Sullivan during one of their daily briefings. "They want us to see how powerful they are, but they're also showing us how their technology works. Can we use that? Maybe. Their shields are incredibly strong, but they have to modulate them to allow their own weapons to fire. For just a fraction of a second, there's a gap in their defenses. How small a fraction? Tiny. Humans couldn't react fast enough to exploit it, but computers could." Sullivan made a note on his tablet. "What else?" "Their ships are fast, but they maneuver like they're designed for fighting other ships with similar technology. They expect their enemies to behave in certain ways. If we don't behave the way they expect, we might surprise them. We might." As the 6 months passed, both sides continued their preparations. The Valdris remained confident that humanity would either surrender or be quickly defeated. The humans worked desperately to find some way to survive what was coming. Neither side fully understood what the other was planning. The Valdris had never faced an enemy that refused to fight by their rules. The humans had never faced an enemy so overwhelmingly superior in every conventional measure of military power. The stage was set for a confrontation that would surprise everyone involved. Dr. Richard Barnes had not slept in 3 days. His small laboratory on the moon was filled with pieces of alien technology that the Horizon crew had managed to scan during their visit to Nexus Prime. Most of it was beyond human understanding. But Richard was not looking for understanding. He was looking for weaknesses. The breakthrough came when he was examining the energy patterns from Valdris shields. The technology was incredible, able to stop weapons that could destroy entire cities. But as Richard studied the data, he noticed something strange. "They're too perfect," he said to his assistant, Dr. Beth Collins. "What do you mean?" Beth asked. She had been working beside him for days, trying to make sense of alien physics that seemed to break every rule humans had discovered. "Look at these patterns," Richard said, pointing to his screen. "The shields adapt to incoming weapons automatically. They analyze the threat and adjust their frequency to block it, but that means they have to recognize what's attacking them first." Beth looked at the data. So what if we attack them with something they don't recognize? Something that doesn't fit any pattern in their database? Like what? Richard smiled for the first time in weeks. Like human stupidity. While Richard worked on shield problems, Lieutenant Commander Ashley Morgan was solving weapons problems. She had taken apart every piece of Valdris technology they could get their hands on, no matter how small. A piece of their metal, a fragment of their electronics, even dirt from the floor of Nexus Prime. Ashley was not a scientist like Richard. She was an engineer who had spent her career building things that worked, not things that were elegant. When she looked at Valdris technology, she did not see perfection. She saw complexity. "It's like they've never had to make anything simple," she told her team. "Every device has 100 features that nobody needs. Every system has backup systems for the backup systems. Maybe that's why they're so advanced," suggested one of her engineers. "Or maybe that's why they've forgotten how to fight," Ashley replied. She showed them what she had built. It looked like junk, a collection of human and alien parts held together, with wire and tape. But when she activated it, something incredible happened. The alien metal started to vibrate, then crack, then fall apart completely. "How?" asked one of her team. "Their metal is designed to resist energy weapons, kinetic weapons, even nuclear explosions," Ashley explained. "But it's not designed to resist having its molecular structure scrambled by incompatible technology. When you mix human electronics with their materials in the wrong way, bad things happen to them." The work was dangerous. 3 of Ashley's devices had exploded during testing, and one had created a small hole in the laboratory wall that went all the way through to the other side. But each failure taught them something new about how to hurt things that were supposed to be impossible to damage. Admiral Sullivan was worried about something else entirely. Earth's military had enough new weapons to arm a few hundred ships, but the Valdris could bring thousands. They had enough shields to protect major cities, but the aliens could attack from space where no human defenses could reach them. "We need more time," he told General Stone during one of their daily meetings. Time for what? Stone asked. To build more weapons. We don't have the materials. To train more soldiers? We don't have the people. To develop better technology? We don't have the knowledge. Time to make them make mistakes, Sullivan said. The Valdris have won every war they've ever fought because they're stronger than everyone else. But what if this war doesn't end quickly? What if it drags on for months or years? How good are they at fighting a war they can't win easily? Meanwhile, the Valdris were making their own preparations. High Counselor Zethkar had decided that humanity needed a more personal demonstration of Valdris superiority. He ordered that Earth be allowed to send a champion to fight their greatest warrior in single combat. The announcement came as a formal challenge sent to every major government on Earth. Let your strongest fighter face ours, the message said. When your champion falls, your people will understand the futility of resistance. The message included information about their champion. His name was Vorgeth, and he was a Throkani warrior who had never been defeated in battle. He stood 15 feet tall and could lift a tank over his head. His natural armor could stop any human weapon, and his strength could crush steel with his bare hands. This is a trap, General Stone said when they received the message. They want to break our morale by showing everyone how helpless we are. Maybe, Sullivan agreed. But maybe it's also an opportunity. They chose Danny Rodriguez to represent humanity. It was not an easy choice. Earth had stronger fighters and better soldiers, but Danny had something that none of them possessed. He had already faced Valdris technology and found ways to surprise them. Danny spent 2 weeks preparing for the fight. He studied everything they knew about Throkani biology and fighting techniques. He practiced with weapons and without them. Most importantly, he spent time thinking about what the Valdris expected him to do. They expect me to try to match him. Strength for strength, Danny told Jake the night before the fight. They expect me to fight like a human warrior facing an alien warrior, but that's not what this is. What is it then? It's a puzzle. He's bigger and stronger and faster than me. His armor is better than anything I could wear, and his weapons are more advanced than anything I could carry. By every measure that matters, I should lose in seconds. So how do you win? Danny smiled. By changing what matters. The fight was scheduled to take place on Nexus Prime, in the same chamber where humanity had been evaluated. Representatives from across the Valdris Empire gathered to watch their champion destroy the human challenger. The betting was not about who would win, but about how quickly the human would be defeated. Vorgeth entered the arena to the cheers of thousands of aliens. He was even larger than the descriptions had suggested, a massive insect-like creature, covered in black armor that gleamed under the arena lights. When he moved, the floor shook beneath his feet. Danny entered from the opposite side. He looked impossibly small compared to his opponent, a tiny human in simple clothing carrying no visible weapons. The alien audience laughed when they saw him. Some made jokes in their own languages about how the fight would be over before it began. High Counselor Zethkar spoke from his elevated position above the arena. Let this combat demonstrate the natural order of the galaxy. Strength belongs to the strong, and the weak serve those who are greater than them. The fight began, with Vorgeth charging across the arena, moving faster than something his size should have been able to move. Danny did not try to meet the charge or dodge it. Instead, he ran toward the wall of the arena. The alien audience made sounds of confusion. Running away was not how combat was supposed to work. Vorgeth changed direction to follow Danny, but the human had already reached the wall and was climbing it. For the next several minutes, Danny led Vorgeth on a chase around the arena. The massive warrior smashed through obstacles and tore apart the arena floor trying to catch his smaller opponent. But Danny was always somewhere else, using the environment in ways that Vorgeth had never encountered before. The alien audience grew quiet. This was not the quick, decisive victory they had expected to see. The human was not fighting like a warrior at all. He was fighting like prey that refused to be caught. Then Danny did something that shocked everyone in the arena. Instead of continuing to run, he deliberately let Vorgeth corner him against a wall. The massive warrior raised his arms to deliver the finishing blow, but Danny had been waiting for this moment. As Vorgeth brought his arms down, Danny stepped slightly to one side and pushed a piece of debris into the warrior's path. Vorgeth's own momentum carried him forward, and his massive weight drove the debris deep into a gap in his armor that Danny had identified during their chase. The great warrior stumbled and fell. The debris had not seriously injured him, but it had done something more important. It had shown that he could be hurt. The arena fell completely silent. For the first time in his life, Vorgeth was on the ground in a fight. For the first time, in their memory, the aliens were watching their champion lose to someone who should have been helpless. Danny stood over the fallen warrior and offered him a hand up. "Good fight," he said. Vorgeth stared at the human's outstretched hand for a long moment. Then slowly he reached out and let Danny help him to his feet. The sound that erupted from the alien audience was unlike anything ever heard in the arena before. It was not cheering or booing. It was the sound of a galaxy that had just realized everything it believed about strength and weakness might be wrong. The news of Vorgeth's defeat spread through the Valdris Empire faster than anyone expected. High Counselor Zethkar tried to control the information, but it was too late. Aliens across thousands of worlds had watched the fight, and they had seen something that changed everything. For 3,000 years, the Valdris had told the galaxy that resistance was hopeless. The strong ruled and the weak served. This was the natural order, and no force in the universe could change it. But a small human had just proven them wrong. Zethkar called an emergency meeting of the Supreme Council. The 7 leaders of the Yao Empire gathered in their crystal chamber, their voices mixing like a symphony of breaking glass. "It was a trick," declared Counselor Morthak of the Thrakani. "No human could defeat our greatest warrior in honest combat." "The combat was observed by thousands," replied Counselor Velsera of the Nexari. "There was no trickery. The humans simply fought in a way we did not expect." "Then we will show them what honest warfare looks like," Zethkar said. "Prepare the full invasion fleet. We will crush Earth completely and remind the galaxy why they fear us." The Valdris war fleet was the largest military force ever assembled. 5,000 ships carrying weapons that could destroy planets. Warriors from dozens of species, all sworn to serve the Empire. Enough firepower to conquer 100 worlds. Admiral Jennifer Walsh stood on the bridge of the Earth defense ship Liberty, watching the enemy fleet approach on her screens. She had never seen so many ships in one place. Each alien vessel was larger and more powerful than anything humanity had ever built. "Contact from Admiral Sullivan," reported her communication officer. Sullivan's voice came through clearly. "All ships remember the plan. We are not trying to destroy them, we are trying to survive them, make every shot count, but more importantly, make them work for every victory." The battle began when the Valdris fleet reached the orbit of Mars. They expected to find Earth's forces gathered together for a final desperate stand. Instead, they found nothing but empty space and a few small human ships that immediately began running away. "Cowards," muttered Krelvas, who had been promoted to fleet captain after his success monitoring Earth. "They cannot even face us in honest battle." But as the Valdris fleet spread out to chase the fleeing humans, they discovered that the humans had not been running away. They had been leading the aliens into a trap. The asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter had been turned into a weapon. Hidden among the rocks were thousands of mines, missile launchers, and automated defense systems. When the Valdris ships entered the belt, space around them exploded with unexpected firepower. The alien shields held against the attacks, but they were forced to slow down and maneuver carefully. Their perfect formation broke apart as ships had, to dodge debris and return fire at targets they could barely see. Captain Tony Mitchell led a squadron of human fighters through the chaos. His ships were tiny compared to the alien vessels, but they moved through the asteroid field like they had been born there. They struck at the Valdris ships wherever their shields were weakest, then disappeared back into the rocks before the aliens could respond. "They fight like insects," complained one of the Valdris captains. "No honor, no courage, they hide and sting and run away." "But they are hurting us," another captain replied. "My ship has taken 17 hits. The damage is minor, but it is accumulating." That was the human strategy, not to win quick victories, but to make the Valdris pay a price for every mile they advanced. Not to destroy alien ships, but to force them to use ammunition and energy defending themselves. Not to be heroes, but to be so annoying that conquest became more trouble than it was worth. The battle moved from the asteroid belt to the orbit of Earth itself. Here the humans had prepared their strongest defenses. Not just weapons and shields, but strategies that the Valdris had never encountered before. When alien ships tried to attack human cities, they found that the cities had been evacuated. The buildings were empty, but they were filled with traps and surprises. When the aliens tried to capture strategic locations, they discovered that the humans had already destroyed or moved everything valuable. Colonel Kevin Parker coordinated the ground defense from a bunker deep beneath what used to be New York City. His screens showed alien landing craft touching down in dozens of locations, but instead of finding resistance, they found nothing. "They're getting frustrated," reported Major Sandra Bell from her position outside the city. "They came here expecting to conquer a planet, but there's nothing left to conquer. We moved everyone and everything important months ago." The Valdris had planned for many things, but they had not planned for an enemy that refused to let them win. Every human they captured was someone who had volunteered to be captured, carrying false information. Every base they overran was empty except for booby traps. Every victory felt hollow because there was nothing left to claim. High Counselor Zethkar watched the battle reports with growing anger. His forces were winning every engagement, but somehow they were not winning the war. The humans kept falling back and regrouping. Every time the Valdris advanced, they found that their enemies had already moved somewhere else. Worse, news of the war was spreading to other parts of the Empire. Species that had been conquered centuries ago were beginning to ask dangerous questions. If humans could resist the Valdris, why couldn't they? If the Empire could be challenged, was it really as powerful as it claimed? On the planet Corvani Prime, miners who had worked in Valdris mines for 200 years stopped working and demanded better treatment. On Telthari, scientists who had been forced to develop weapons for the Empire began sabotaging their own research. On a dozen other worlds, subject species started to remember what freedom felt like. The rebellion that the Valdris feared most was not happening on Earth. It was happening everywhere else. "Counselor," reported one of Zethkar's aides, "we are receiving distress calls from 17 systems. Local populations are refusing to work. Some are actively fighting our garrison forces." Zethkar felt something he had never experienced before in his 3,000-year life. Doubt. The Empire was not being destroyed by human weapons. It was being destroyed by human ideas. In space around Earth, Admiral Walsh received a communication that surprised everyone on her bridge. It was coming from one of the largest Valdris ships, and it was addressed to her personally. "Human Admiral," the voice said in perfect English, "I am High Counselor Zethkar of the Valdris Empire. I wish to discuss terms." "Terms of our surrender?" Walsh asked. "No," Zethkar replied. "Terms of ours." The final meeting took place on a neutral space station, not far from where the war had begun. Jake Morrison, now promoted to Admiral, sat across from Zethkar in a room that seemed too small for such a momentous occasion. "Your species has taught us something we had forgotten," Zethkar said. His crystal body seemed dimmer than it had during their first meeting, as if some inner light had gone out. "Strength is not just about weapons or technology or the ability to destroy your enemies." "What is it about then?" Jake asked. "It is about the will to keep fighting when everything seems hopeless. It is about finding new ways to solve old problems. It is about refusing to accept that things cannot change." Zethkar stood up and walked to the window that looked out at the stars. "For 3,000 years we have ruled through fear. We told the galaxy that resistance was futile, and eventually, everyone believed us. Even we believed it. But we were wrong. Resistance is never futile if you are willing to pay the price for it. And your species was willing to pay any price to remain free." Jake thought about all the people who had died in the war, all the cities that had been destroyed, all the sacrifices that had been made. The price had been terrible, but they had paid it willingly. "What happens now?" Jake asked. "Now we learn," Zethkar replied. "Your species will help us teach the galaxy a new way to live, not under the rule of the strong, but in cooperation between equals. Dr. Amanda Foster was the first human to set foot on a Valdris medical station. She had come to treat wounded aliens, both Valdris and the species they had conquered. Many of the patients were afraid of her at first. They had been told that humans were dangerous, unpredictable, capable of terrible violence. But as Amanda worked, cleaning wounds and setting broken bones, the aliens began to understand something new about humanity. Yes, humans could be dangerous when threatened, but they could also be gentle, caring, and willing to help even their former enemies. "Why do you help us?" asked a young Throkani warrior whose arm Amanda had just finished repairing. "Because you needed help," she replied simply. It was a concept that many aliens struggled to understand. In the Valdris Empire, you helped people because they were useful to you, or because you were ordered to. But humans helped people because it was the right thing to do. The war was over, but the real work was just beginning. The galaxy had to learn how to live without the empire that had controlled it for so long. Thousands of species had to figure out how to govern themselves after centuries of being told what to do. Humanity found itself in an unexpected position. They had become the most feared and most respected species in the galaxy, not because they were the strongest, but because they had proven that strength was not the only thing that mattered.